Standing in the shadow of a massive stone circle, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down around you, what would it have been like to witness its construction? These ancient megaliths, some weighing as much as 50 tons, were carved, transported, and placed with astonishing precision, all without the help of modern machinery or advanced astronomy. How did civilizations thousands of years ago achieve such feats, and why did they go to such extraordinary lengths to align these stones with the stars, the sun, and the cycles of nature? These questions lie at the heart of one of history's most enduring mysteries, and today we're going to unravel the hidden stories behind these enigmatic structures. From the rolling hills of England, where Stonehenge captures the solstice sun with uncanny accuracy, to the sun-baked plains of Egypt, where the pyramids mirror the constellations above, these alignments are no accident. They're deliberate, painstakingly planned, and steeped in meaning. But what meaning? Were they sacred calendars guiding agricultural cycles, cosmic temples connecting Earth to the heavens? Or perhaps something even deeper, a language of stones speaking across time to us today? The truth is, we're still piecing it together, and every discovery adds another layer to the puzzle. This isn't just a story about rocks and stars. It's about people ingenious, resourceful, and deeply connected to the world around them. Imagine the collective effort, the generations of knowledge passed down, the rituals performed under these ancient skies. These stones are more than monuments. They're windows into lost worlds, waiting for us to peer through. So join me as we step into the footsteps of the builders, decode the alignments that have stood the test of time, and uncover the secrets whispering from the shadows of these megalithic marvels. The journey begins now. The story of megalithic structures begins long before written history, in a time when societies relied on oral traditions and the rhythms of the earth to guide their lives. These towering stones, scattered from the windswept moors of Scotland to the dense jungles of Indonesia, tell a silent tale of human ingenuity. What's astonishing isn't just their size, though some, like the monoliths of Karnak in France, stretch for miles, but the fact that so many cultures, separated by vast distances and even vaster stretches of time, arrived at strikingly similar ideas. How did Neolithic farmers with no shared language or contact independently conceive of such monumental designs? One compelling theory points to the heavens. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned with near-perfect precision to the cardinal directions, or Newgrange in Ireland, where a narrow passageway floods with sunlight only on the winter solstice. These weren't just random placements. They required meticulous observation of celestial patterns over generations. But astronomy alone doesn't explain everything. Some megaliths, like the dolmens of Korea, seem designed for burial, their massive capstones shielding tombs beneath. Others, like the mysterious menhirs of Portugal, stand alone in isolated landscapes, their purpose lost to time. Then there's the human element. Moving a single 50-ton stone would have required hundreds of people working in unison, hauling, lifting, and positioning with nothing but ropes, logs, and raw determination. This suggests something profound about these early societies. They were far more organized than we often assume. Were these projects acts of devotion, binding communities together in shared labor, or were they statements of power, like the towering obelisks of ancient Egypt, proclaiming a ruler's dominance over both land and sky? Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the alignments themselves. From the sun dagger of Fajada Butte in New Mexico, where sunlight pierces a spiral petroglyph only during equinoxes, to the star-aligned temples of Malta, these structures whisper of a universal human impulse to reach beyond the earthly, to touch the divine. Whether as calendars, tombs, or gateways to the cosmos, their true meaning may never be fully unlocked. But each time we stand beneath their shadows, we're reminded these stones weren't just placed. They were meant to endure. The precision with which ancient builders aligned their megalithic structures to celestial events is nothing short of breathtaking. At Stonehenge, the summer solstice sunrise slices perfectly between the uprights of the heel stone, casting a beam of light deep into the heart of the circle. Over in Ireland, Newgrange's narrow passageway, hidden beneath a massive mound, stays in darkness all year except for those few precious minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, when sunlight floods the chamber in a golden blaze. These weren't happy accidents. They were deliberate, calculated feats of engineering, achieved without telescopes, written records, or even the wheel. So how did they do it? One theory suggests that early astronomers used simple markers, sticks, stones, or even notches in the landscape to track the sun's shifting path over years, even generations. Imagine a community patiently observing the horizon, noting where the sun rose each morning, waiting for that pivotal day when it paused at its northernmost or southernmost point before reversing course. That knowledge, passed down orally, could have guided the placement of stones with astonishing accuracy. But here's the twist: some alignments, like those at the 13,000-year-old site of Gerbicley, Teep in Turkey, predate agriculture itself. If these weren't farming calendars, what purpose did they serve? Ritual is another compelling answer. Many cultures saw solstices and equinoxes as sacred thresholds, times when the veil between worlds grew thin. The Maya built pyramids that cast serpent-shaped shadows during equinoxes, while the ancestral Puebloans carved spiral petroglyphs that only interact with sunlight on specific days. These weren't just scientific observations, they were acts of communion. The stones, in essence, became bridges, literal meeting points between the earthly and the cosmic. Yet the most tantalizing possibility is that these alignments encode a lost language of the stars. Some researchers point to the Pleiades, a cluster of stars referenced in myths from Greece to Polynesia, often linked to megalithic sites. Could these stones be maps pointing to constellations or celestial events we've yet to fully decipher? The truth may lie in the patterns we're only beginning to recognize. Every time a new alignment is discovered, like the recent revelation that Scotland's Callanish stones mirror the shape of a lunar standstill, it's a reminder these builders weren't just watching the sky. They were conversing with it, and their stones, silent for millennia, still have stories left to tell. The myths woven around megalithic sites are as enduring as the stones themselves, offering tantalizing glimpses into how ancient peoples, and those who came after, understood these enigmatic structures. Take Brittany's Carnac stones, where medieval legends whisper of a Roman army frozen in place by the spell of a powerful druid. This story, though fanciful, speaks volumes about how later cultures grappled with the sheer scale and mystery of these formations. They couldn't fathom how humans alone could have created them, so they reached for the supernatural. Halfway across the world, in India's northeastern hills, towering menhirs tell a different tale. Local Kosi traditions describe them as markers for ancestral spirits, physical embodiments of the dead standing watch over the living. Here, the stones aren't just monuments but active participants in rituals smeared with offerings, draped in cloth, and believed to hold the power to bless or curse. This connection between megaliths and the afterlife isn't unique. From the massive dolmens of Korea to the chambered tombs of Orkney, countless cultures seem to have associated these stones with thresholds between worlds. But what about the builders themselves? When we peel back the layers of later myth, we catch fleeting echoes of their original beliefs. The pyramids of Giza, aligned with Orion's belt, mirrored the Egyptians' vision of the pharaoh's journey to the stars. Ireland's Newgrange, with its solstice-aligned passage, may have been a theater for rebirth rituals where the returning sun symbolized eternal cycles. Even Gerbicley Teep's animal carvings, serpents, foxes, and scorpions, could represent constellations or spirit guides in a prehistoric cosmology we're only beginning to decipher. The most fascinating aspect isn't just the diversity of these beliefs, but their eerie similarities. Why did cultures from Scandinavia to Peru associate megaliths with celestial travel or ancestral communication? Some scholars argue it's no coincidence that these sites tapped into universal human experiences: the awe of the night sky, the grief of loss, the longing to commune with forces greater than ourselves. Whether as temples, tombs, or cosmic maps, their true power may lie in this duality. They're both deeply rooted in their local context and strangely resonant across continents and millennia. The stones endure, but the stories they inspire are ever evolving, reminding us that myth and meaning are as much a part of their legacy as the alignments themselves. The sheer scale of megalithic engineering challenges everything we think we know about ancient capabilities. Picture this: blue stones weighing up to 4 tons each, quarried from the Preseli Hills in Wales, somehow transported over 150 miles to the Salisbury Plain, where Stonehenge rises against the sky. No wheels, no metal tools, just ingenuity and relentless determination. Modern experiments have tried replicating the feat using Neolithic methods, hauling stones on wooden sledges greased with animal fat, rolling them atop logs, or even floating them on rafts along rivers and coastlines. Some attempts succeeded, but all revealed the staggering coordination required. This wasn't just brute force, it was logistics on a grand scale, a symphony of manpower and planning spanning decades. Then there's the precision. In Peru, the Inca fit massive stone blocks together so tightly that not even a razor blade can slip between them. No mortar, just perfection. How some speculate they used simple tools like stone hammers and bronze chisels, combined with a technique called guess and check, patiently shaping each block until it locked into place. Others wonder if they had access to lost technologies like plant-based solvents that could soften stone temporarily, allowing them to mold it like clay. Over in Malta, the temples of Haga Kim feature interlocking slabs with curved edges and intricate patterns, suggesting an almost playful mastery of physics. These builders didn't just stack stones, they danced with them. But perhaps the most humbling realization is that these feats weren't isolated. From the moai of Easter Island, carved and marched miles across rugged terrain, to the obelisks of Egypt, raised upright with nothing but ropes and sand ramps, ancient cultures shared a universal language of innovation. What unites them isn't just the how, but the why. These projects demanded communal effort, binding societies together in shared purpose. Whether as acts of devotion, displays of power, or love letters to the cosmos, the stones stand as testaments to what humans can achieve when they reach beyond the limits of their time. And that's the real mystery, not the tools they used, but the vision that drove them. It's one of the most tantalizing questions in archaeology. How do we explain the uncanny resemblances between megalithic structures separated by oceans and millennia? The dolmens of Korea, with their massive capstones balanced delicately on upright stones, could be twins to those found in the French countryside. Meanwhile, the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica echo the silhouettes of Egypt's monuments, despite being built thousands of years later and half a world away. These parallels aren't just superficial, they extend to precise astronomical alignments, construction techniques, and even the spiritual significance embedded in their designs. So what's going on here? Did ancient civilizations secretly trade blueprints across continents? Or is there something deeper at work, a universal human impulse to build toward the heavens? One camp of researchers points to the possibility of lost maritime networks. The seafaring skills of ancient cultures are often underestimated. Take the Polynesians, who navigated vast stretches of the Pacific using only the stars and ocean currents. Could Bronze Age traders have connected distant shores, spreading ideas along with goods? There's tantalizing evidence. Artifacts like ostrich eggs and Mediterranean glass beads found in Scandinavia, or traces of coca and tobacco, plants native to the Americas, in ancient Egyptian mummies. If materials could travel, why not knowledge? Some even speculate about a forgotten mother culture, a sophisticated civilization lost to time, whose influence rippled outward like whispers on the wind. But another perspective argues for independent innovation. After all, humans everywhere faced similar challenges: tracking time, honoring the dead, communing with the divine. When you study the movement of the sun or the cycles of the moon, certain patterns become obvious. The solstices, for instance, are universal markers, and it's no surprise that cultures from Ireland to Peru would notice and celebrate them. The pyramid shape, too, isn't just mystical, it's structurally sound, the most efficient way to build tall with stone. Perhaps these similarities aren't proof of connection, but of convergent ingenuity, like birds on different continents evolving wings to solve the same problem: flight. Yet the most intriguing clues lie in the details. Consider the orientation of passage graves. From Newgrange to the Mayan temples, many face the winter solstice sunrise, a time symbolic of rebirth. Or the recurring motif of spirals carved into stones from Malta to the American Southwest, often aligned with celestial events. These aren't just practical choices, they're poetic ones, suggesting a shared language of symbols and sky. Whether through contact or collective intuition, our ancestors seem to have been speaking the same silent, stone-carved dialect, one we're still learning to translate. And with every new discovery, the threads between these distant sites grow more visible, weaving a story not of isolated cultures, but of a world far more intertwined than we ever imagined. The repetition of celestial alignments across distant cultures isn't just a curiosity, it's a whisper from the past, hinting at something fundamental about how our ancestors saw their place in the cosmos. Take the Nubian pyramids standing tall along the Nile's southern reaches. Unlike their Egyptian counterparts, these structures are steeper, narrower, and meticulously oriented toward the pole star of their time, Alpha Draconis, a star that hasn't held that position for over 4,000 years. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the Karnak stones in Brittany stretch across the landscape like a frozen army, their rows aligned to the rising and setting of the moon during its major standstill, an event occurring only once every 18.6 years. How could cultures with no known contact fix their gaze on the same celestial markers? The answer might lie in the stars themselves. Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, held sacred status from the banks of the Nile to the plains of Mesopotamia. The Dogon people of Mali, with no written language or advanced instruments, preserved detailed knowledge of Sirius's companion star, a white dwarf invisible to the naked eye. Their myths speak of amphibious beings who brought this wisdom from the heavens, echoing eerily similar stories in Sumerian texts. Then there's Venus, the morning and evening star, worshipped as Quetzalcoatl by the Maya and as Ishtar by the Babylonians. Its cyclical dance across the sky was so precisely tracked that Mayan astronomers predicted its movements with an error margin of just 1 day over 500 years. These weren't just observations, they were acts of devotion woven into calendars, rituals, and the very stones left behind. But here's the twist: Earth's axis wobbles over millennia, a phenomenon called axial precession, slowly shifting our view of the stars. The pole star of the pyramids era isn't ours today, and in another 12,000 years, Vega will take its place. This means some alignments no longer work as they once did, like a clock frozen at the wrong time. At Ireland's Loughcrew Cairns, a tomb passage once illuminated by the equinox sun now sits in darkness, its celestial connection severed by the slow tilt of the planet. Yet these broken alignments are clues, revealing not just what ancient builders saw, but when they saw it. By reverse engineering these shifts, archaeologists can date sites with startling precision, turning stones into time capsules. What's most striking, though, is the emotional resonance behind these patterns. Whether it's the Pleiades guiding Maori navigators across the Pacific or Orion's belt etched into the walls of Mesopotamian temples, these repetitions suggest a universal human impulse to look up and seek meaning in the chaos. The stars were more than guides, they were ancestors, gods, and storytellers, and in aligning their stones to the heavens, our ancestors weren't just building monuments. They were anchoring themselves to eternity, crafting a language of light and stone meant to outlast empires, languages, even memory itself. The real mystery isn't how they did it, but why they all across deserts, jungles, and oceans felt the same irresistible pull to reach for the sky. Gerbicley Teep rises from the Turkish plains like a riddle carved in stone, its massive T-shaped pillars arranged in circles older than agriculture itself. Whoever built this site over 11,000 years ago belonged to a world we can barely imagine, a time before cities, before writing, before even the domestication of wheat growing wild around their feet. What compelled hunter-gatherers to quarry and transport 16-ton limestone blocks, carving them with intricate reliefs of lions, scorpions, and vultures? And why, after centuries of use, did they deliberately bury the entire complex under mountains of earth, as if sealing away a secret too potent to leave exposed? The absence of answers is as striking as the stones themselves. Unlike the pyramids or Stonehenge, where later cultures left at least fragments of explanation, hieroglyphs, myths, or medieval chronicles, Gerbicley Teep offers no written clues. Its builders vanished so completely that not even their name survives. Some researchers speculate they were the ancestors of the Natufians, a Neolithic culture known for early settlements, but the leap from simple huts to monumental architecture remains unexplained. Others wonder if these people belong to a lost chapter of human history, survivors of the Younger Dryas period, a catastrophic climate shift around 12,000 years ago marked by floods, volcanic eruptions, and plummeting temperatures. Could Gerbicley Teep have been a response to that upheaval, a sacred space to plead with the forces that had shattered their world? Oral traditions offer tantalizing hints. The Epic of Gilgamesh, inscribed millennia later, speaks of a time before the flood when the gods walked with men, and ancient structures were raised to reach the heavens. Similar flood myths echo from Mesopotamia to the Andes, often mentioning ancestral builders of great wisdom. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia, whose cultural memory stretches back over 60,000 years, describe Dreamtime ancestors who shaped the land and placed stones to mark celestial events. Could these stories preserve distorted memories of the megalith builders? Archaeology reveals glimpses of their daily lives. At Gerbicley Teep, animal bones by the thousands suggest ritual feasting, gazelles, aurochs, and wild boars carried from distant regions, proof of vast gatherings. But there's no evidence of permanent dwellings, no graves, no signs of warfare. This was a place of pilgrimage, not a city. The builders may have been nomadic, converging seasonally to carve, worship, and then disperse, leaving the stones to guard their mysteries. The greatest enigma isn't their disappearance, but the echoes of their legacy. Strikingly similar symbols, spirals, handprints, and predator carvings. appear at sites like Malta's Hypogeum and the rock art of the American Southwest, all separated by oceans and epochs. Were these motifs carried by some long-forgotten migration, or do they tap into a shared human symbolism, rising independently from the depths of our collective psyche? The stones refuse to say, but each time a new layer of earth is brushed away, we're reminded, history isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's whispered by the vanished in a language of rock and sky. Deep beneath the sun-baked earth of Malta lies a chamber where stone sings. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, isn't just a marvel of prehistoric architecture, it's a carefully tuned instrument. When certain tones are vocalized within its labyrinthine passages, the entire space hums in response, amplifying and distorting sound in ways that defy coincidence. Researchers measuring these acoustics discovered something startling. The chamber resonates at a frequency of 110 Hz, a pitch known to alter brainwave patterns, shifting consciousness toward states associated with meditation or even trance. This isn't just an echo, it's evidence of a lost science where architecture and sound intertwine to create experiences we're only beginning to comprehend. The Hypogeum isn't alone in its musicality. High in Peru's Andes, the Temple of the Condor at Machu Picchu features walls that whistle when wind rushes through precisely placed fissures, producing tones that mimic the cries of the sacred bird etched into its stones. Meanwhile, at Ireland's Newgrange, the chamber's corbelled ceiling doesn't just disperse weight, it creates a reverberation effect, transforming spoken words into haunting, otherworldly murmurs. These phenomena can't be accidental. Ancient builders were clearly attuned to the physics of sound, sculpting spaces where vibrations became tools for ritual, healing, or transcendence. Modern experiments shed light on why. Studies at the Hypogeum and similar sites reveal that exposure to frequencies between 90 and 120 Hz can suppress the brain's left hemisphere, the center of logic and language, while stimulating the right hemisphere, linked to creativity and intuition. In essence, these spaces may have functioned as neural switches, guiding visitors into altered states without substances or strenuous meditation. Some researchers even suggest these sonic properties could explain the prevalence of oracle chambers in ancient cultures, where priests or shamans received visions amidst the stone's reverberations. But the most intriguing question remains: how did Neolithic builders without oscilloscopes or tuning forks achieve such precision? One clue lies in the materials themselves. Limestone, granite, and basalt each have distinct acoustic properties, and the ancients likely learned through trial and error how to manipulate them. At Britain's Rollright stones, certain rocks emit metallic clangs when struck, a property known as lithophony, possibly exploited in moonlit ceremonies. Other sites feature cup marks or spiral carvings positioned at nodal points where sound waves interact most powerfully, hinting at a deliberate mapping of sonic landscapes. Perhaps the answer also lies in the human body. Oral traditions from Mongolia to the Amazon describe singing stones or spirit voices emerging from sacred sites, often attributed to ancestors or deities. But what if these legends preserve a fragmented memory of ritual practices? Imagine a shaman drumming near a resonant dolmen, the vibrations syncing with participants' heartbeats, or chants within a stone circle building to a crescendo that literally shakes the ground beneath their feet. These weren't just performances, they were technologies of transformation where architecture, sound, and human perception merged into something greater. The stone's silence today is deceptive. Scratch the surface literally, and you'll find whispers of a world where sound shaped spirituality, where the boundary between physical and spiritual was as thin as a vibrating string. From the subsonic rumble of England's Merry Maiden's Circle to the crystalline harmonics of Mexico's Teep pyramids, these sites challenge us to listen differently. Not just with our ears, but with our bones, our blood, our collective memory. The megaliths may stand mute under modern skies, but their song lingers if you know how to hear it. The idea that ancient megaliths might be connected by invisible threads of energy stretches back nearly a century, when amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins first coined the term ley lines. Walking the English countryside in the 1920s, Watkins noticed something peculiar. Churches, burial mounds, and standing stones often fell along perfectly straight paths, sometimes spanning miles. To him, these weren't random alignments but remnants of ancient trade routes or pilgrimage paths, long forgotten by history. But as the idea spread, it took on a life of its own. Soon, ley lines weren't just forgotten roads, they were cosmic energy highways, pulsing with unseen forces that ancient cultures supposedly harnessed. Dowsers, those who claim to detect hidden energies using rods or pendulums, swear they can feel surges at sites like Stonehenge or Karnak. Some describe tingling sensations, others report their tools twisting violently as if pulled by an invisible current. Even without instruments, visitors often speak of an uncanny stillness or heightened awareness near these stones. Skeptics, of course, wave this away as placebo effect or overactive imaginations. Yet there's a curious pattern. Many megalithic sites sit atop geological fault lines, where subterranean water flows or mineral deposits create subtle electromagnetic anomalies. Could ancient builders have sensed these disturbances, marking them as sacred? Science offers tantalizing crumbs. Studies at places like Avebury in England reveal weak but measurable magnetic fluctuations around certain stones, possibly due to underground streams or concentrated quartz, which generates tiny electrical charges under pressure. Meanwhile, the granite used in Karnak's menhirs contains high levels of radioactive elements like radon, enough to make modern Geiger counters flicker. Were these properties accidental, or did Neolithic engineers intentionally select stones that hummed with energy? The spiritual interpretation takes it further. Indigenous traditions from the Aboriginal Australians to the Hopi speak of song lines or spirit paths, invisible tracks connecting landmarks charged with ancestral power. In China, the concept of dragon lines in Feng Shui mirrors the ley line theory, with temples and tombs positioned to harness Earth's vital energy, or Kai. Even medieval cathedral builders seem to follow similar principles, aligning their naves with celestial and terrestrial forces. But here's the twist: many proposed ley lines crumble under scrutiny. When researchers plot sites mathematically, the alignments often dissolve into statistical noise, a classic case of apophenia, where humans see patterns in randomness. And yet, the sheer number of sacred sites perched along geological rifts or mineral seams is hard to dismiss entirely. Perhaps the truth lies between extremes, not a global energy grid, but localized phenomena that ancient cultures observed and honored. After all, if you felt the earth tremble beneath your feet or saw springs bubble up near certain stones, wouldn't you mark that place as special too? The debate reveals less about the past and more about our longing to believe the ancients possessed lost wisdom, that the earth is more than rock and soil. Whether ley lines are science or symbolism, they remind us that every stone, every alignment is part of a larger conversation, one that spans centuries, disciplines, and the unyielding human desire to find meaning in the land beneath our feet. Beneath the rolling green hills of Ireland's Boyne Valley, the ancient passage tomb of Newgrange waits in silent testimony to a belief system that saw death not as an end, but as a celestial journey. When the winter solstice sun pierces its narrow entrance, flooding the inner chamber with golden light, it's as if the builders designed a direct line between the earthly realm and the stars. But this wasn't just architecture, it was a carefully coded message about the afterlife. Across Europe, from the wedge tombs of Cornwall to the massive cairns of Scotland's Orkney Islands, megalithic burial sites share this obsession with alignment. The dead weren't simply laid to rest, they were launched toward the heavens, their tombs serving as cosmic launch pads. What's striking isn't just the precision of these alignments, but what they reveal about Neolithic spirituality. At Spain's Dolmen de Menga, a 5,000-year-old burial mound frames the rising sun over a distant mountain peak during the summer solstice, while Portugal's Almenda's cromlech aligns its standing stones to lunar cycles. These weren't arbitrary choices. For cultures without written language, the movements of celestial bodies became a sacred script, a way to narrate the soul's passage. The tombs themselves often mimic this symbolism, their passages narrow and womb-like, suggesting rebirth rather than finality. Even the carvings inside tell a story, spirals that mirror galaxies, zigzags resembling lightning or rivers, all hinting at a belief that death was a transformation, not a disappearance. The objects buried with the dead add another layer to the mystery. In Brittany's Gavrini's tomb, polished axe heads of jadate, a stone sourced from the distant Alps, were placed beside skeletons, their surfaces gleaming like captured moonlight. Danish passage graves reveal amber beads shaped like crescent moons, while Orkney's tomb of the eagles held talons from white-tailed seabirds, possibly meant to carry spirits skyward. These weren't mere grave goods, they were toolkits for the afterlife, each item chosen to navigate the unknown. Some tombs even show evidence of recurring ceremonies, bones rearranged years after burial, doorways repeatedly sealed and reopened, as if maintaining an ongoing dialogue between the living and the dead. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the stars themselves. Many passage graves face not just solstice sunrises, but specific constellations. The constellation we call Orion today, often associated with death and rebirth across ancient cultures, appears mirrored in the layout of Ireland's Loughcrew cairns. Meanwhile, the pyramids of Giza and the mounds of Ohio's Hopewell culture both align to the cyclical rise of Sirius, the star linked to resurrection in Egyptian and Dogon cosmology. This celestial repetition across disconnected cultures suggests a shared intuition that the dead didn't vanish into darkness, but ascended to join the eternal dance of the cosmos. Yet for all their grandeur, these tombs also speak to intimate human moments. The remains of children nestled beside adults in Spanish Tholos tombs, the worn steps leading into Maltese hypogee where mourners once carried their loved ones, the finger grooves still visible on the entrance stones of Newgrange. Each detail whispers of grief, hope, and the stubborn refusal to let death sever bonds. The megaliths weren't just monuments or astronomical tools. They were love letters carved in stone, sent across millennia by people who believed fiercely that no one truly dies as long as the stars still turn. And in that belief, they may have been more right than they knew. The stone surfaces of ancient megaliths are rarely blank. Instead, they pulse with symbols that seem to whisper across time. At Ireland's Newgrange, a single spiral carved into the entrance stone mirrors the swirling patterns of galaxies, while the Gavrini's tomb in France is a canvas of interconnected zigzags and concentric circles, each groove worn smooth by millennia of touch. These aren't random decorations, they're deliberate, dense with meaning. But what meaning? Some researchers see star maps in these carvings, like the Pleiades cluster etched into Scotland's Callanish stones, or the Orion-like figures adorning Portugal's Almenda's cromlech. Others argue their sacred geometry. encoding mathematical ratios found in nature, the Fibonacci sequence in a snail's shell, the fractal branching of trees revered as divine blueprints. The repetition of certain motifs is impossible to ignore. Spirals appear from the rock art of the American Southwest to the temples of Malta, often positioned where sunlight strikes them during solstices or equinoxes. Cup marks, small, circular depressions dot megaliths from India to England, sometimes arranged in patterns that mirror constellations. Then there are the more enigmatic symbols, the three-armed triskells of Brittany's menhirs, the serpentine waves on Colombia's El Infinito stones, the labyrinthine designs of Sardinia's Tomba dei Giganti. Could these be fragments of a universal symbolic language, a prehistoric emoji set conveying concepts like rebirth, fertility, or cosmic order? One compelling theory ties these carvings to shamanic visions. Indigenous cultures worldwide describe entering trance states where patterns like spirals and zigzags dominate perception, a phenomenon neurologists call entoptic imagery. The Sand people of southern Africa, whose rock art dates back thousands of years, explicitly link these shapes to spiritual journeys. Perhaps megalithic carvers were depicting not the physical world, but the landscapes of altered consciousness, mapping encounters with ancestors or deities. The stones in this light become frozen glimpses into other realms, yet the most tantalizing clues lie in the carving's placements. At Bryn Celli in Wales, a serpentine groove runs along the tomb's inner wall, aligning perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, as if the stone itself were a conduit for the sun's energy. In Peru's Say-White monolith, intricate carvings of terraces and canals suggest a three-dimensional map, a guide for both earthly and celestial navigation. Even the simplest symbols might have served as mnemonic devices, storing knowledge about planting cycles, migration routes, or mythic histories in an era before writing. The challenge is that symbols evolve. A spiral might mean the sun's journey in one culture and the cycle of life in another. Without a Rosetta Stone for megalithic carvings, we're left piecing together fragments. But the very ambiguity is part of their power. These symbols resist fixed interpretation, inviting each generation to project its own questions onto them. In that sense, they're still doing their original job, not just conveying messages, but sparking wonder, drawing us deeper into the mystery of who carved them and why they chose stone as their parchment. The answers may be lost, but the stones keep asking the questions. Few topics ignite the imagination like the mystery of megaliths, not just among archaeologists, but in the wilder corners of speculation where ancient aliens, lost civilizations, and forgotten technologies thrive. Take Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods, which famously suggested that sites like the pyramids or Puma Punku were built with extraterrestrial assistance. Or Graham Hancock's sweeping narratives of a pre-flood superculture, wiped from history but leaving fragments of its wisdom in stone. These ideas might lack peer-reviewed backing, but their persistence in books, documentaries, and online forums reveals something profound. When science hesitates, storytelling rushes in. Mainstream archaeology often dismisses these theories as pseudoscience, pointing to the meticulous evidence of human ingenuity, like the reconstructed sledges and rope fragments found near Egypt's pyramids, proving how Bronze Age laborers moved colossal blocks. Yet the gap between how they could have and how they actually did leaves fertile ground for speculation. Consider the precision of Peru's Sacsayhuamán, where massive stones fit together in jagged, earthquake-resistant patterns so tight that modern engineers struggle to replicate them without lasers. Or the fact that Gerbicley Teep predates agriculture by millennia, challenging the long-held assumption that complex societies arose only after farming. These outliers don't demand alien intervention, but they do whisper, there's more to this story. The allure of alternative theories isn't just about filling gaps, it's about the human need for wonder. Ancient astronaut narratives tap into a timeless question. Are we alone? Lost continent myths like Atlantis or Lemuria reflect our fascination with cataclysm and rebirth, themes echoing from Plato to Hollywood. Even the wildest theories often contain kernels of truth. The Dogon people's knowledge of Sirius's invisible companion star, once cited as proof of alien contact, likely stems from cultural exchange with astronomers, but their oral traditions still showcase an uncanny celestial awareness. What's most revealing is how these ideas evolve. The same stones that Victorian scholars attributed to Druids are now claimed as evidence of Hyperborean ancestors or Atlantean refugees. Each generation projects its anxieties and hopes onto the megaliths, turning them into mirrors. Today's viral, ancient tech videos showing acoustic levitation or melted stone aren't so different from medieval legends of Merlin magically transporting Stonehenge's bluestones. Both are attempts to explain the inexplicable. The real lesson isn't that fringe theories are wrong, but that megaliths defy simple narratives. They stand at the intersection of science and myth, hard evidence and haunting mystery. While archaeologists painstakingly reconstruct the past with trowels and radiocarbon dating, the stones keep inviting us to dream. And perhaps that's their greatest power, not just as relics of the past, but as catalysts for the imagination, reminding us that history isn't a closed book. It's a conversation, one where even the wildest ideas can lead us back to deeper questions about who we are and what we're capable of. The same stones that have stood silent for millennia are suddenly speaking, thanks to cutting-edge tools that let us peer beneath the earth without lifting a shovel. LiDAR, that laser-eyed marvel mounted on planes and drones, has stripped away dense jungle canopies to reveal lost cities in Cambodia and sprawling ceremonial centers in the Amazon. But it's not just about seeing through trees. Ground-penetrating radar pulses waves deep into the soil, mapping subterranean chambers and buried pathways invisible to the naked eye. At Stonehenge, this tech recently unveiled a shocker, a hidden ring of massive pits, each over 10 feet deep, encircling the monument like a ghostly moat. These weren't random holes, they were deliberately dug, their positions mirroring celestial patterns, hinting at a ritual landscape far grander than we ever imagined. Then there's 3D modeling, stitching together thousands of scans to recreate ancient sites with pixel-perfect precision. Archaeologists used this to unfold the interior of Scotland's Micho tomb, revealing how its entrance corridor aligns not just with the winter solstice sunset, but with the silhouette of a distant mountain, a double layer of intentionality no one had noticed before. Even more startling, the same technique exposed microscopic chisel marks on Easter Island's moe, showing how their creators adjusted angles by fractions of a degree to catch the equinox light just right. These aren't just upgrades to old maps, they're rewiring our understanding of ancient ingenuity. Yet every answer breeds new mysteries. When LiDAR spotted a massive rectangular platform beneath Indonesia's Gunung Padang, carbon dating suggested it might be over 20,000 years old, potentially rewriting the timeline of advanced construction. Skeptics urge caution, but the implications are dizzying. Meanwhile, AI algorithms trained on megalithic patterns are spotting alignments humans missed, like a previously unnoticed correlation between Portugal's Almenda's cromlech and the Pleiades' position 8,000 years ago. The stones, it seems, are cryptograms waiting for the right codebreaker. What's most thrilling isn't just the discoveries, but how they're democratizing archaeology. Citizen scientists now pore over LiDAR scans online, flagging anomalies professionals might overlook. In Mexico, high school students used photogrammetry apps to document petroglyphs, uncovering star maps that matched Maya codices. This isn't just about gadgets, it's about collapsing the distance between past and present, letting us walk virtually alongside the builders as they plotted stones to the rhythm of the cosmos. The next breakthrough might not come from a dig site, but from a laptop halfway across the world, where someone spots a pattern everyone else walked past for centuries. The megaliths haven't changed, but how we see them, that's evolving by the day. The delicate dance between preserving ancient megaliths and sharing them with the world grows more precarious by the year. At Ireland's Newgrange, the soft shuffle of tourist feet has worn grooves into stone steps carved 5,000 years ago, while the breath of countless visitors raises humidity levels inside the tomb, threatening its intricate carvings with gradual decay. On Easter Island, the Moi's porous volcanic stone crumbles under relentless coastal winds and unregulated touching, their faces slowly dissolving into memory. Even the act of loving these sites to death through Instagram selfies, souvenir chiseling, or well-meaning but misguided restoration attempts can erase the very history we seek to celebrate. The tension between access and preservation sparks fierce debate. Closing sites like Stonehenge to the public, as some archaeologists advocate, would protect them but sever a living connection to the past. The alternative, limiting visitor numbers, as Peru has done with Machu Picchu, helps, but creates its own complications. Local communities often rely on tourism revenue, and strict regulations can feel like another form of cultural dispossession. In Turkey, the surge of visitors to Gerbicley Teep has brought economic lifelines to nearby villages, yet the site's fragile T-pillars now stand behind barriers, their secrets shielded behind glass-like museum exhibits. Is this the price of survival, turning sacred spaces into sanitized displays? For Indigenous communities, the stakes are even higher. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia's Murujuga region watch in anguish as industrial pollution eats away at rock art older than the pyramids, while the Maori of New Zealand battle to repatriate carved stones taken as colonial trophies. In Bolivia, the Aymara see the Tiwanaku ruins not as relics, but as living ancestors, meaning restoration work that replaces original stones with replicas, no matter how scientifically precise, feels like erasing the dead. These conflicts reveal a painful truth. Preservation isn't just about chemistry and climate control. It's about whose vision of the past gets to endure. The ethics of intervention divide experts just as deeply. Should we let sites like Scotland's Clover cairns crumble naturally, accepting decay as part of their story? Or do we owe it to future generations to stabilize them, even if that means injecting modern resins into ancient cracks? The reconstruction of England's Stonehenge, a timber circle, controversially moved to a museum, ignited outrage among those who believed it should have been left to the tides. Yet without such drastic measures, we risk losing entire chapters of human ingenuity to the indifferent march of time. Technology offers fragile hope. Drones monitor erosion at Cambodia's Angkor Wat, while 3D scans create digital twins of endangered sites, an insurance policy against oblivion. In Japan, holograms now rebuild crumbling shrines for visitors, a compromise that satisfies curiosity without physical harm. But pixels can't replace the awe of standing before stones placed by hands millennia gone. The real challenge isn't just preserving megaliths, but preserving their power, to humble us, to connect us, to remind us that we're part of a story much larger than ourselves. In the end, these stones don't belong to any one generation. They're whispers across time, and our greatest duty is to ensure they're still speaking long after we're gone. The unfinished obelisk of a swan lies trapped in its granite cradle, a silent witness to ambition cut short. Towering over 100 feet long and weighing more than 1,000 tons, it would have been the largest single piece of stone ever carved by human hands. But deep cracks appeared as workers chiseled it free from the bedrock, forcing them to abandon it mid-creation. Today, the scars of their tools remain frozen in time, offering a rare glimpse into the colossal effort behind these monuments. Was it a simple engineering miscalculation, or did the pharaoh who commissioned it fall from power, leaving the project to fade into obscurity? The obelisk's very incompleteness makes it priceless, a raw snapshot of megalithic ambition in progress. On the other side of the world, Easter Island's Moai stand sentinel over a landscape as enigmatic as the statues themselves. How did a society with no metal tools or wheels carve nearly 900 of these towering figures, some reaching 33 feet tall and weighing 80 tons? Even more perplexing, how did they transport them across miles of rugged terrain to their coastal platforms? Oral traditions speak of the statues walking with the help of divine power, while modern experiments suggest teams may have rocked them forward on ropes, inch by laborious inch. But the island's most haunting mystery isn't how the Moai were moved, but why. Were they ancestral guardians, political symbols, or conduits for sacred energy? The truth may lie in the island's ecological collapse, a cautionary tale of a society that poured its resources into stone giants while the forests around them vanished. Then there's Baalbek's trilithon, 3 monstrous blocks in Lebanon's Roman temple complex, each weighing over 800 tons, twice as much as Stonehenge's heaviest stones. The Romans claimed the platform predated them, built by a race of giants. Modern engineers still can't explain how such masses were lifted 20 feet onto their foundation without cranes or pulleys. Nearby, an even larger stone lies abandoned in the quarry, nicknamed the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. At nearly 1,600 tons, it dwarfs every known megalith. Who intended to use it, and what catastrophe made them leave it half-carved? The common thread in these sites isn't just mystery at scale. From the jungles of Cambodia, where the Temple of Ko-Ker was abandoned mid-construction, to Michigan's underwater Stonehenge-like formations, whose purpose remains debated, these unfinished or inexplicable projects whisper of societies pushing their limits. Some faltered under the weight of their own ambition, like the Olmec's abandoned colossal heads at La Venta. Others, like Japan's Ishi no Hoden, a floating megalith whose purpose was lost even to local memory, remind us how easily knowledge can evaporate across centuries. What makes these riddles so compelling isn't just the lack of answers, it's the humanity they reveal. The Aswan workers who walked away from their cracked obelisk, the Easter Islanders who toppled their own statues during civil strife, the nameless engineers of Baalbek who dared to dream in stone. Their failures and silences speak as loudly as their successes. In the gaps between what we know and what we can only guess, we find not just puzzles but people, and perhaps that's the greatest lesson these stones teach, that history isn't a tidy story of progress, but a mosaic of ambition, ingenuity, and sometimes glorious, unanswered questions. Beneath the towering stones of Malta's Hagakim, a weathered figurine lies half-buried in the dirt, a serene, full-hipped woman carved from limestone, her arms folded as if in prayer. She's one of dozens discovered across megalithic Europe, from the voluptuous Venus of Willendorf to the regal goddesses of Çatalhöyük. These artifacts whisper a provocative question. In societies that moved mountains of stone, were women the unseen architects of both spiritual and earthly power? For decades, the default image of megalith builders was male, muscled laborers hauling rocks under the watch of priest kings. but as archaeologists sift through bones, art, and burial goods, a more nuanced story emerges. Take the 5,000-year-old tomb of Saint Michel in France, where a woman was buried with a polished stone axe, a tool often linked to status and ritual. Or the Iberian Peninsula's warrior priestess graves, where women lie with flint daggers and amber necklaces, their skeletons showing the same muscle wear as men from repetitive labor. Even in death, these women defy easy categorization. Were they leaders, craft specialists, guardians of celestial knowledge? The answer may lie in the symbols they left behind. In Ireland's Loughcrew cairns, swirling petroglyphs mirror the patterns found on Neolithic female figurines, suggesting a sacred shorthand passed down through generations. The most compelling evidence comes from living traditions. In India's Khasi Hills, where megalithic culture endures, women still oversee ancestral stone ceremonies, chanting hymns that date back millennia. Similarly, Basque folklore remembers the Sorjanak wise women who allegedly raised the region's dolmens with the help of supernatural forces. These echoes hint at a world where spiritual authority and stonework weren't gendered domains but shared endeavors. Yet the biggest clue might be in the stones themselves. At Portugal's Almenda's cromlech, carvings of pregnant figures align with the moon's phases, linking feminine imagery to celestial cycles. In Orkney, the Micho tomb's entrance corridor frames the winter solstice sunset, a time when Scottish legends say the Cailleach, a divine hag, renews the land. If these alignments marked moments of rebirth, who better to interpret them than those who literally gave life? The silence of prehistory makes certainty impossible, but the patterns are too stark to ignore. From the priestesses who may have charted solstices at Newgrange to the unnamed women whose fingerprints linger in the clay mortar of Gerbicley Teep, their legacy is etched not just in art, but in the very bones of the monuments we marvel at today. The stones don't discriminate, they bear the marks of all who shaped them. Perhaps it's time we stopped assuming whose hands those were. The world the megalith builders inhabited was far different from our own, a shifting, dynamic landscape where coastlines advanced and retreated, rivers changed course, and entire forests rose and fell. At Carnac in Brittany, over 3,000 standing stones march across the land in eerie, sinuous rows. Today, they stand among fields and quiet roads, but when they were erected, many of these menhirs likely marked the edges of ancient estuaries or sacred springs long since vanished beneath layers of silt. Similar stories echo across the globe. In what's now the Sahara Desert, the Tassili Enaja Plateau holds rock art depicting a lush, green world of giraffes and rivers, proof that the climate there was once unrecognizable. Could the stone circles and monoliths of the past have been responses to these dramatic environmental shifts? One compelling theory suggests that as the last ice age retreated, rising sea levels and unpredictable weather forced communities to adapt in extraordinary ways. Take the submerged stone structures off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island. These stepped terraces and angular formations, some lying over 80 feet underwater, may have been ceremonial sites when sea levels were lower, before the ocean reclaimed them around 10,000 years ago. Similar drowned megaliths appear near Malta, where underwater cart ruts hint at a time when the islands were connected to Sicily by dry land. Were these stones once boundary markers, guiding people through landscapes that were literally disappearing beneath their feet? The connection between megaliths and water goes even deeper. In Ireland, many passage tombs cluster along the River Boyne, their entrances aligned not just to solstice sunrises but to the river's bends, as if the water itself held sacred significance. The same pattern appears in Peru, where the ancient Chachapoya people built cliffside sarcophagi overlooking the Utcubamba River, their positions mirroring the flow of the water below. Some researchers argue these placements weren't just symbolic. In an era before written records, rivers and coastlines were natural calendars, their seasonal floods and tides marking time as reliably as the stars. A stone placed where the river flooded every spring might have been more than a shrine. It could have been a practical warning system, a way to track the rhythms of survival. But climate didn't just shape where megaliths were built. It might explain why they appeared when they did. Around 6,000 years ago, a period of abrupt cooling known as the Bond Event disrupted weather patterns across Europe, leading to failed harvests and migrations. Intriguingly, this coincides with a surge in megalith construction, particularly in coastal regions. Were these stones raised as pleas to the gods during famine? Or did the sudden scarcity of resources trigger territorial disputes, with communities using megaliths to mark their claims on fertile land? The answer may lie in the stones themselves. Many show signs of periodic rebuilding, as if each generation added to them in times of crisis, turning them into living records of resilience. The most haunting evidence comes from places where the environment fought back. On Scotland's Orkney Islands, the Neolithic village of Scarabrie was buried under sand dunes after violent storms, a disaster that may have inspired the nearby ring of Brodgar, a stone circle built on higher ground. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans abandoned their cliff dwellings during a prolonged drought, leaving behind petroglyphs that some believe chart the dwindling rains. The stones in this light become more than monuments. They're time capsules of human adaptation, etched with the lessons of a world in flux. What emerges is a picture of societies deeply attuned to their surroundings, not just as passive witnesses to change, but as active participants in a dialogue with the earth. Whether as territorial markers, flood warnings, or cosmic petitions, these megaliths speak of a time when humanity's relationship with nature was both precarious and profoundly intimate. The next time you stand before an ancient stone, look beyond its surface. The true story isn't just in the rockets in the land that shaped it, the rivers that once fed it, and the generations who leaned on it as the world shifted beneath their feet. Bulls charge across the stones of Gerbicley Teep, their muscular forms frozen mid-motion as if the rock itself could barely contain their power. Serpents coil around the pillars of Malta's Tarxian temples, their sinuous bodies echoing the rhythms of flowing water. Birds take flight from the menhirs of Karnak, their wings outstretched toward a sky they've watched for millennia. These creatures weren't mere decorations, they were a language, a sacred vocabulary etched into stone by hands that saw the world alive with meaning. But what were they trying to tell us? The bull, appearing from Anatolia to Iberia, might hold the key. At Çatalhöyük, a Neolithic settlement older than the pyramids, bulls' horns were embedded into walls and benches, their skulls painted with ochre as if in ritual. Some scholars argue these represent strength and fertility, symbols of a life-giving force. Others point to celestial connections, the bull's likeness to the constellation Taurus, which marked the spring equinox 6,000 years ago. Could these carvings be star maps linking earthly cycles to cosmic events? The same bull imagery resurfaces in later Minoan frescoes and Hindu Nandi statues, suggesting an unbroken thread of reverence spanning continents. Then there are the serpents winding their way through megalithic art like living rivers. In Ireland's Loughcrew cairns, a serpentine groove slithers along the stone, aligning with the equinox sunrise, a fusion of reptile and solar symbolism. The Aboriginal rainbow serpent, the Mesoamerican feathered serpent, even the Norse Jörmungandr encircling the world, these recurring motifs hint at something universal. Were serpents guardians of hidden knowledge, as in Gnostic traditions, or embodiments of the Earth's energy, their undulating forms mirroring underground water currents and ley lines? The answer might lie in their dual nature, creatures of both ground and sky, able to shed their skin and emerge renewed, birds, though, soar above interpretation. The vultures of Gerbicley Teep, carved with eerie precision, might symbolize death and transformation scavengers who turn flesh into air. Yet in Polynesia, petroglyphs of frigate birds adorn sacred rocks, guiding navigators across the Pacific. The difference in meaning could be as vast as the landscapes themselves. What unites them is their vantage point, wings outstretched between earth and heavens, messengers bridging worlds. The true magic of these carvings isn't just in their individual meanings, but in their conversations across time. A bull on a Scottish standing stone might speak to a bull in Anatolia, not through contact but through shared awe. These animals weren't just depicted, they were invoked, their essences captured in stone as talismans or prayers. Whether as clan totems, astrological markers, or spirit guides, their presence whispers of a time when humanity didn't just live in nature, but spoke its language fluently. And if we listen closely, the stones might still teach us a word or two. Standing atop the ruins of a medieval church in England's countryside, you might not realize the ground beneath your feet once pulsed with much older rhythms. Many of Europe's grand cathedrals and humble chapels were deliberately constructed atop ancient stone circles, their foundations literally and symbolically rooted in the sacred landscapes of the past. In Avebury, the massive henge was partially dismantled during the Middle Ages, its stones repurposed for village walls, yet the church built at its center curiously aligns with the same solstice axes as the original monument. This wasn't mere practicality, it was a quiet acknowledgement that certain places held power across millennia, their magnetism too potent for even new religions to ignore. The blending of old and new beliefs created fascinating hybrids. In Brittany, locals once rubbed the menhirs of Lochmariaca for fertility long after Christianity arrived, prompting priests to carve crosses into the stones in an attempt to baptize them. Ireland's sacred wells, often marked by prehistoric standing stones, became sites of Christian pilgrimage adorned with rosaries and votive offerings. Even the legendary King Arthur got woven into the tapestry. His supposed connection to sites like Tintagel and Glastonbury Tor likely stemmed from their existing megalithic allure, his mythic stature grafting onto landscapes already thick with mystery. Modern movements continue this tradition of reinterpretation. At Stonehenge, neo-druids in white robes gather for solstice ceremonies, though their rituals owe more to 18th century romanticism than Iron Age practices. Meanwhile, Japan's Ishi-no-Hoden megalith draws Shinto priests and quantum physics enthusiasts alike, each group seeing in its weathered surface a reflection of their own beliefs. This adaptability is the stone's true genius. They become mirrors for whatever culture encounters them. Architecture tells its own story of influence. The spiral motifs of Newgrange resurface in Celtic illuminated manuscripts like the Book of Kells, while the geometric precision of Egyptian pyramids inspired both Renaissance architects and 20th century minimalists. More subtly, the very act of assembling communities to raise massive structures from medieval cathedrals to modern skyscrapers echoes the collective effort behind megaliths, proving some human impulses transcend time. Perhaps the most poignant legacy lies in folklore. Cornish tales of standing stones that dance at midnight, Scandinavian legends of trolls turned to stone by sunlight, even the Maori story of the petrified warriors at Titukanga e Noho. These aren't just whimsy. They're evidence of how megaliths became storytelling anchors, their immensity sparking explanations that blend awe with intimacy. A child asking why a stone leans sideways might be told it's listening for buried secrets, turning geology into poetry. The stones endure because they're more than relics, they're collaborators. Every generation projects its dreams onto them, whether medieval peasants seeking protection, Victorian antiquarians hunting for druids, or today's astronomers marveling at their celestial precision. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's an invitation, and as long as people stand before them, tracing the same grooves worn by ancient hands, the conversation between past and present will never truly end. Attempting to move a 20-ton block of stone using nothing but ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer muscle might sound like a scene from a historical drama, but for experimental archaeologists, it's just another day on the job. One of the most revealing projects took place in the 1990s when a team led by engineer Mark Whitby tried to replicate the transport of a single bluestone from Wales to Stonehenge. Using a replica Neolithic sledge and greased timber tracks, they managed to haul the massive rock overland, but the effort required dozens of people, constant lubrication with animal fat, and a carefully coordinated system of ropes and levers. The experiment didn't just prove it was possible, it highlighted the staggering level of social organization needed. This wasn't a haphazard effort, it was a well-oiled machine of human collaboration, where every pull and pivot had to be perfectly timed. Equally fascinating are the experiments with stone shaping. At the French site of Guidelen, where a 13th century castle is being built using only medieval techniques, stonemasons discovered something unexpected. Simple wooden mallets and bronze chisels could carve limestone faster than modern tools when used with the right rhythm. The same principle applies to megaliths. Researchers working with granite, a far harder stone than limestone, found that pounding it with spherical dolerite hammers, a method once used by ancient Egyptians, created precise fractures with surprising efficiency. The key wasn't brute force, but patience and an intimate understanding of the stone's natural grain. These builders didn't just work against the rock, they worked with it, listening for the subtle cracks and fissures that guided their strikes. But perhaps the most eye-opening experiments involve raising the stones. In Japan, a team attempted to erect a replica of one of Easter Island's moai using the oral tradition of walking the statue with ropes. By rocking the figure side to side in a controlled sway, they managed to walk it several hundred yards, a method that would explain the scattered moai found along ancient roads, abandoned mid-journey. Meanwhile, at Denmark's Ledger Land of Legends, archaeologists demonstrated how timber of frames and counterweights could lift massive stones into place with just a handful of workers. The secret: physics. By leveraging balance and pivots, they turned back-breaking labor into an elegant dance of weight and momentum. What these experiments reveal isn't just technical skill, but a shared human genius. From the Inca's knobbly stone joins to Stonehenge's mortise and tenon fittings, the solutions varied, but the creativity didn't. Each culture hacked the problem with the materials and knowledge they had, proving that innovation isn't a modern monopoly. And sometimes the failures taught as much as the successes. When a British team tried to float a bluestone on a replica prehistoric raft, it sank twice, suggesting that overland transport, however grueling, might have been the safer bet. Yet the most profound lesson isn't about how they moved the stones, but why they bothered. The experiment stripped away modern assumptions, revealing societies capable of long-term planning, communal sacrifice, and a vision that spanned generations. A single megalith might take decades to complete, meaning many builders would never see the finished work. That kind of patience changes how we view these cultures, not as primitive, but as profoundly future-minded. Every rope burn, every calloused hand, every dropped stone was a vote of confidence in a tomorrow they'd never see, and that, more than any engineering feat, might be their greatest legacy. The precision with which ancient megaliths mark celestial events suggests these stones were far more than monuments. they were humanity's first attempts to pin down the relentless march of time. At Ireland's Newgrange, the winter solstice sunrise doesn't just graze the entrance, it floods the inner chamber like a spotlight, a phenomenon so exact it couldn't be accidental. Meanwhile, in Egypt's Nabta Playa, a stone circle dating back over 7,000 years older than Stonehenge by millennia aligns with the rising of Sirius, the star that heralded the Nile's annual life-giving floods. These aren't just pretty arrangements, they're proof of civilizations stitching their survival to the rhythms of the cosmos. But how did they achieve such accuracy without modern tools? The answer might lie in patient, generational observation. Picture a Neolithic astronomer crouching at dawn, year after year, placing a small marker where the sun rose each morning. Over decades, these markers would reveal a pattern: the sun's path creeping northward until the solstice, then retreating south. At Scotland's Callanish stones, the alignment mirrors the moon's 18.6-year cycle, a pattern so subtle it would require lifetimes of record-keeping. This wasn't just science, it was a sacred duty, a way to predict planting seasons, migrations, or floods with the reliability of a ticking clock. Yet timekeeping wasn't always about practicality. Some alignments seem purely ceremonial, like Mexico's Pyramid of Kukulkan, where the equinox sun casts a serpent-shaped shadow slithering down the steps, a symbolic union of earth and sky. Similarly, Malta's Mnajdra temple's southern chamber lights up only during the equinoxes, its threshold carved to filter sunlight into a razor-thin beam. Were these theatrical displays meant to awe worshippers, or did they serve as celestial confirmation of a priest's authority? The line between calendar and theater blurs when the cosmos becomes a stage. The most intriguing cases defy easy categorization. In Wyoming's Bighorn Medicine Wheel, a spoke-like arrangement of stones points not only to solstice sunrises, but also to the bright stars Aldebaran, Rigel, and Sirius. For the Crow people, this was a place of vision quests where timekeeping intertwined with spirituality. Across the Pacific, Polynesian navigators used stone compasses to read star paths, their voyages timed to celestial events etched into rock. These structures suggest a universal truth: measuring time was never just about counting days. It was about finding meaning in the infinite, anchoring human lives to something eternal. What's striking isn't just the diversity of these timekeeping methods, but their shared urgency. From the sun-scorched plains of Nabta Playa to the misty hills of Ireland, cultures separated by continents and centuries all felt the same pull: to quantify the unquantifiable, to impose order on chaos. The stones stand as silent witnesses to our oldest obsession, the desperate, beautiful struggle to hold time in our hands, even as it slips through our fingers. The resurgence of interest in ancient megaliths has brought them into the spotlight of modern spirituality, but not always with the reverence their original builders intended. Walk into any New Age shop today, and you'll likely find jewelry etched with Celtic spirals, T-shirts emblazoned with sacred geometry from Gerbicley Teep, or workshops promising to teach druidic secrets of Stonehenge. While this fascination speaks to the enduring power of these symbols, it also raises uncomfortable questions. When does admiration cross into appropriation? And how do we honor the living descendants of megalithic cultures while exploring these sites with curiosity and respect? Take the iconic triple spiral of Newgrange, a motif carved into stone 5,000 years ago. To the Neolithic people of Ireland, it may have symbolized the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, a sacred concept tied to solstice rituals. Today, that same spiral appears on corporate logos, tattoo parlors, and Instagram aesthetics, often stripped of its cultural weight. For modern Celtic communities, this isn't just a trivial oversight. It's an erasure of their ancestral legacy. The same pattern repeats globally. Native American tribes watch as their sacred petroglyphs are commercialized, while Rapa Nui elders protest the misuse of Moai imagery by tourism companies. The stones themselves don't speak, but the people who still guard their stories do, and their voices are too often drowned out by profit or platitudes. Yet the issue isn't black and white. Many Indigenous groups welcome respectful engagement with their heritage. In Australia, Aboriginal elders collaborate with archaeologists to document rock art, ensuring their knowledge informs interpretations. The Maori of New Zealand have successfully reclaimed control over carved meeting grounds, offering guided tours that share their history on their own terms. These partnerships show a path forward, one where curiosity is balanced with consent, and where modern seekers don't just take from ancient cultures but listen to them. The line between inspiration and appropriation often comes down to context. There's a stark difference between someone wearing a Navajo-inspired pattern as a fashion statement and a scholar spending years studying Hopi astronomy with tribal permission. One reduces a living tradition to a commodity, the other builds bridges of understanding. Even well-intentioned practices like neo-pagan solstice ceremonies at Stonehenge can stumble when they ignore the site's deeper layers of meaning, overlaying modern beliefs onto ancient stones without acknowledging the gaps. What's lost when we divorce symbols from their origins? The answer lies in the difference between a postcard and a pilgrimage. Megaliths weren't built to be Instagram backdrops. They were prayers in stone, woven into the fabric of daily life, death, and cosmic wonder. To truly honor them, we might start by asking not what they can give us mystical experiences, aesthetic pleasure, or a sense of connection, but what we owe to the cultures that birthed them. After all, the stones have endured for millennia. The least we can do is approach them with humility, recognizing that their greatest mysteries may not be meant for us to solve. The soil beneath our feet holds more secrets than we could ever imagine. Just a few years ago, LiDAR scans in Guatemala's Patane jungle revealed over 60,000 previously unknown Mayan structures, entire cities swallowed by the forest, their pyramids and causeways invisible to the naked eye. And that's just one example. From the dense rainforests of the Amazon to the windswept plains of Kazakhstan, ancient megaliths likely lie waiting, their stories preserved under layers of earth and time. What might we uncover next? A lost stone circle in the Scottish Highlands, its alignments pointing to forgotten stars, or perhaps a buried temple complex in Indonesia, its walls etched with celestial maps that predate written history. Every shovel of dirt turned by archaeologists could rewrite the narrative of human ingenuity. But it's not just about finding new sites, it's about reinterpreting the ones we already know. Take the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, scholars assumed it was built around 2500 BCE. But geological studies of water erosion patterns suggest it might be far older, possibly dating back to a time when the Sahara was still green. Similarly, the submerged Yonaguni monument off Japan's coast, with its terraced steps and right angles, continues to spark debate. Is it a natural formation shaped by tides, or the remnants of a civilization lost to rising seas? These unanswered questions remind us that history isn't set in stone sometimes. It's carved into it, waiting for the right moment to be understood. Then there are the carvings we can see but still can't read. The mysterious symbols on Malta's Tarxian temples, the spirals and zigzags of Ireland's Noath Passage tomb, the strange glyphs adorning Peru's Gate of the Sun. These could be anything from star charts to sacred hymns, their meanings locked away without a linguistic Rosetta Stone. Modern technology offers hope. AI-powered pattern recognition is now being trained on megalithic motifs, searching for repetitions or connections across continents that human eyes might miss. Imagine decoding a symbol found in both Brittany and Bolivia, proving a cultural link no one expected. The biggest breakthroughs might not come from the ground at all, but from the stars above. Archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient cultures understood the heavens, is revealing startling connections. Recent analysis of Portugal's Almenda's cromlech suggests its stones don't just mark solstices, they might map the positions of specific stars as they appeared 7,000 years ago, a celestial snapshot frozen in rock. Meanwhile, researchers are re-examining lesser-known sites like America's Poverty Point, where earthworks align not just to the sun but to lunar standstills, events so rare they occur only once every 18.6 years. These findings hint at a sophistication in prehistoric astronomy that rivals our own. What keeps the mystery alive is the humbling realization that we've only scratched the surface. For every Stonehenge or Easter Island, there are dozens of sites still hidden, their stones silent but not forgotten. Future technologies, quantum sensing to detect buried structures without digging, advanced spectroscopy to analyze tool marks at a molecular level, even AI reconstructions of eroded carvings could peel back layers of time we once thought were lost forever. The past isn't dead, it's patient, waiting for us to ask the right questions, to look at the same stones with new eyes. And when we do, the answers might change everything we thought we knew about who we are and where we come from. From celestial alignments to lost civilizations, the hidden stories behind ancient megalithic alignments continue to captivate us. These stones are more than relics, they are windows into humanity's shared past. As technology and research advance, we inch closer to unraveling their secrets. But perhaps some mysteries are meant to endure, reminding us of the ingenuity and spirituality of our ancestors. If these stones could speak, what would they tell us? Until then, we keep searching, one alignment at a time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your theories in the comments below. The allure of these ancient stones lies not just in their grandeur, but in the questions they leave unanswered. Every time a new LiDAR scan reveals a hidden structure or an archaeologist deciphers a forgotten alignment, we're reminded that history is a living, breathing thing still being written, still being discovered. And while we may never fully unlock the minds of those who built these monuments, their legacy lives on in the way they challenge us to think bigger, dig deeper, and look closer at the world around us. So the next time you see a standing stone silhouetted against the sky, or a spiral carving catching the light of the solstice sun, take a moment to wonder. Who placed it there and why? What songs were sung around it? What prayers whispered? The stones may not speak, but they're far from silent. They tell a story of human curiosity, perseverance, and the unshakable desire to reach beyond what we know. And that's a story worth passing on. If you've enjoyed this journey through the mysteries of megalithic alignments, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we'll ever crack the code of these ancient stones, or are some secrets meant to stay buried? Until next time, keep exploring and remember, the past is always closer than it seems.